I just thought I'd do a quick run through of small planes and how they can be used for smaller projects such as model making. I have here a Stanley 100 Squirrel tail, which I have shown in a video before, and this is a cheap $10 wooden model ship build that I purchased off Temu and have been customising it as I go bit by bit. Base model is there with the hull and all that you see on the deck, masts, etc. The rat lines have been added. The handles on that piece there have been added. Everything else is pretty much standard out of the box. One of the things with something like this is when you come to things like planking of the hull, you are following some various curves. You've got a concave curve there, convex curve there, and you've also got curves around the front of the bow, and they create all different angles within the plank as you run along the length of the plank. And the planks come in a very standard sheet of about a dozen or so joined together at either end, and they're just a thin piece of balsa. So we're talking very lightweight timber, not hard to work, but also without control is very easily ruined for your particular project by cutting too deep because it's so soft. It still has grain, and sometimes grain will guide your hobby knife off onto an angle that you don't want it to go. So it's very easy to mess these up. When you're working on the planking, you come to situations where with as you're going around the curve of the boat, the planks are sitting on separate portions of that curve. So you end up with the edges of the plank creating like a V. Now you want to close that V up so that you have a nice tight seam on the visible outside. To do that, you need to shave off an angle on the inside of the plank. So where we've got the planks running like that, and where the plank hits the forms and creates an angle, you need to shave one of those planks down on an angle so that it will sit as flat as possible. Now, to do that, I generally will take a plank off. It will have a section on the end that is there. I'll take my squirrel plank, and with this I've got a very nice register in the palm of my hand, and I can hold it lightly but firmly within my hand, and I can just lightly run across. Now I've sharpened this up reasonably sharp, but it's not so sharp that it'll actually cut my fingers if I slip. So unless I slide my finger across the blade, it is pretty safe. So just there, we've just taken the extra bit off, so we've got a nice clean surface to work with. Now where you come to the planking, it's quite simply hold it on an angle and just run it over a few times, and that'll take that edge off and give you, hard to see in this, but it'll give you a slight angle there, which then when matched up with another plank will give you a nice tight seam with the curve. If you need more, you shave it off a little bit further around. So depending on the angle required, that's how I work this, and it's just small amounts. Now here is a little bit more aggressive of an angle on the end there, and I get a nice tight seam coming in on that, but see if I can show it on camera. You can see I get an angle there, so that'll fit around a reasonably tight form on the boat. It's hard to show, but I'm sure you get the idea. Now that angle may vary along the plank, so you may have to do it in sections and vary that along the plank to get it to fit nicely to the last plank that you fitted. So you generally only do one side. So it's the side that's about to be fitted up against the existing plank. And the existing plank you tend to leave at a 90-degree angle, and then depending on what portion of the hull is on, it'll either be left alone or you'll create that angle. Now in some cases you'll start with you've got a convex section here, but as you follow the plank around it's on a concave section. So on one side you'll have the angle leaning one way, and as you come down it'll straighten out and be 90-90. So around here it's 90-90, and then it starts to go the other way. So you need to take a couple of degrees off on the other side. And we come back towards the end, towards the bow. Sorry, no, not the bow, the stern. And it comes back the other way, back to a convex. So you're taking some angle off again on the opposite side. So within that one plank, you've got a few different points of angle change, the length of the plank, and that is the same all the way through from top to bottom of the boat. Then there's one final one where you have sort of, it's kind of like a keystone plank, and you'll see here a slightly thinner plank, the second last one, and it comes down to a taper, and that taper is at either end. Now that is one that you just work on piece by piece. You establish where the thickest end is and how thick it needs to be there, and you line your plank up, mark it up, and take it down to a nice fit there, and then work it out to a taper to your endpoints. So once again you mark your endpoints. If you don't want to shave beyond that because you'll end up creating a gap, and you shave it down. And once again it just comes to the same 100 plane held in the same way, but just taking off a bit at a time and just running it down until you get the angle that you're after. And quite often you're after a bit of a curve, so you'll work that curve in all the way through to meet with the sections of the bow that you're trying to match up to. And you'll do it in piece by piece, and as you get those shavings off and get closer and closer, you'll find that you can bend it around to create it flat on the plane, although it's not flat on the piece. And you can work that through until you have the required taper, and you can just work it up little by little, piece by piece, until you get the taper that you're after, and it just fits nice and snugly inside that last keystone section and enables you to get a very nice clean fit that doesn't stand out like a sore thumb, no gaps, and enables you to close that off, glue it in place, and complete your hull. So you'll end up with kind of like a toothpick set up on the end, and that can be very easily achieved with a simple Stanley 100 or similar. Small plane, held in the hand, not taking up a lot, able to be utilised as the work surface. Like I say, I've not sharpened this so much that I'm going to cut my fingers on it. That's not going to hurt at all, but it's sharp enough. If I ran my finger sideways, I'd cut it, and it's sharp enough that it just takes that small amount off balsa wood very easily. And it enables you to create those sections of a hull from the bow through to the stern in the planking that you would do if it was an actual real size boat. It's exactly the attitude that you need to take. If you're unsure of what it looks like, have a look at some wooden boat building videos in the early stages when they're rebuilding the hull, and you'll see them do this sort of thing with a huge ship saw and planes to dress it up to get it in place. But all the way along the plank they have to cater for different angles between those planks, and that can be achieved with this one little plane when it comes to a model version of the ship. Whether you use or collect. Happy hunting.